Hi, you're listening to After Dinner Conversations, short stories for long discussions. What that means is we get short stories, we select those short stories, and then we discuss them specifically about the ethics and the morality of the choices the characters and the situations put us in. Why did you do this? What makes you do this? What makes us good people? What's the nature of truth, goodness, all of that sort of stuff. And hopefully we're all better, smarter people for it and learn a little bit about why we think the way we think. So thank you for listening.
Okay, so after a very long break, like a 6-month break, welcome back to After Dinner Conversation, short stories for long discussions. This is our discussion podcast. I have to mention that now because we have an audiobook podcast that comes out every week. This one was coming out every 2 weeks. Now it's apparently coming out whenever we feel like it, after like 50 or 60 episodes. I am your co-host, Kolby, here with Sarah.
Hello.
And Jeremy.
Hi.
And if you haven't listened in a while, basically we take short stories that have been published in our monthly magazine and we discuss the discussion questions at the end of them about why people do what they do and all that, and the values and the morals and the ethics of it. Please like and subscribe. Please suggest to your friends. And of course, subscribe to the magazine, which now also has a print magazine after 3 years. So you can get it delivered to your house in like 20 countries. All right. Did I forget anything? Like, this is the first time I've done this in like 6 months, I think.
AfterDinnerConversations.com.
Oh, yeah. That's right. That's exactly right. You always have to mention the website. Okay. So our story is from December 2020. And the story is called For Your Safety by Ty Lazar. It's not a complicated story, and this is actually kind of my favorite kind of story we publish, where it's like, I have a clever concept. Let me explain the concept as quickly as possible. We get a lot of stories that are like, let me tell you the color of the curtains in the room, and I'm just like, I don't need to know the color of the curtains in the room. This one is not like that. So long story short, if you haven't read it, please go read it. You can get it on Amazon or on our website. But the long and the short of it is a woman, I guess her name is Zoe, gets a knock on the door because they're not the morality police. They have some other name.
It's the public health.
Public health officials come by because they have determined that last night her spike in serotonin and dopamine and the corresponding spikes in a person in a similar vicinity to her indicate that she has had intercourse, and that when they check the roster, she has not, they're public health officials, that she has not previously filed the necessary paperwork to have a lover. The IPA, which is, what does it stand for? Like the intimacy partner or something?
Agreement.
Agreement, yeah. Agreement. Right. Which is just, on its face, is not a terrible idea, actually. It's the idea that basically you carry around an app or something that hooks up like a bio scanner thing on your phone or whatever. Somehow they measure you. And you fill out this paperwork to get your sexual partner approved. And the thing they're looking for is to make sure that this person has been tested for various sexually transmitted diseases and that they don't have them and that you don't have them. And so, hook up with whoever you want with, but just file the IPA paperwork, a few minutes beforehand or a few hours beforehand. They don't really say, so that we can just be sure that you're not spreading STDs in the process. She apparently had like a Bumble hookup that she doesn't even know his name, I don't think. And they didn't file the necessary paperwork. She did take precautions, though, in that she had a signal scrambler, so she
VPN.
Basically a VPN, so that the government wouldn't be able to it would get bad readings off of her biometrics. But apparently it didn't work. So when the health police come by, they're like, yeah, no, we're on to you. But they don't know who the guy is because the guy was wearing a
working scrambler.
A working scrambler,
like
yeah. So it was like it spoofed his ID information. So they knew he was there, but they didn't know who he was. And so she gets a fine for her first offense. And I forget what she gets a warning for her first offense. She would have gotten a fine if it had been her second offense.
No. It's a fine for the first offense.
Oh, was it? What was the second offense? Because the third one was you lose social credibility points.
The second offense was medication, empathy.
Oh, that's right.
Right.
Oxytocin, empathy,
Right.
medication.
To make you
Training.
more. That's right. So the second offense, you were required to take medication to make you more pro-social and collective goodness. And then
Right.
the third time, you lose social credibility points with the government, which can cause you to lose your job and make it hard to get I assume, like a home loan or whatever else. And then at the end of the story, after they leave, she goes into the room and finds out the guy's taken a bunch of pills and overdosed. And that's the end of the story. I feel like I made that story a lot more complicated than it is. It's only like 1,500 words. It's like really tightly written.
Yeah, I liked it.
Did you, Sarah? And so what were the
did.
things about it that you liked?
Well, it was quick to the point.
It was quick to the point. Yeah, I liked that about it. I liked that I wasn't like 3 pages in being like, okay,
Where's this going?
Where's this going? Like, when are we getting to the point? No, it was like
I
opening
liked the
sentence.
author's description of the public health officials that showed up at the house.
Yeah,
It was
They actually
buzz cut and faux hawk.
Yeah.
that's right. That's right. She describes them by their haircuts. I
That
also
lent
like
a bit of humor to the whole situation.
yes,
Because it's a very awkward situation from the get-go.
yeah,
Like, you're having a one-night stand with this person that you just met online, and these people, like, bang on your door, and they're like, you didn't tell us you were going to do this before you did it. And
Now you're in trouble.
now you're in trouble.
right.
So
But don't they say this like it's not you're in trouble? We're just here to educate you,
Yeah.
but you're in trouble,
Yeah, they're like, we're not here to judge you.
right?
We're just here to, like, let you know why these things are important.
Right. I thought it was funny that she was actually wearing the guy's shirt when she came to the door, too.
Yeah.
Like, and then she didn't bother to put pants on for the random health police that came to the door.
Yeah, but she had to know who was at the door.
Oh, yeah. Like, if you get a knock at 7 a.m., and those knocks, like, I've seen enough episode of Cops that there's, like, the knock from the neighbor.
There's a way they knock.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's like it's like exigent circumstances knock where it's like 3 hard knocks. Yeah, there's like a different kind of knock. I agree. Jeremy, what did you think, man? Did you like it also?
Yeah, well, I think your point about, filing the paperwork, that this would have been a lot easier if there was just like an app on your phone. Like, yes, let's go.
But they
Right?
say that there's an app.
It's like the
They
limit,
literally
like,
It just
say
seems
that.
like-
Like, you can just do this from the app.
Okay,
That's right,
because
it's like-
it seemed like that it was really complicated to file one of these. So, which would make sense why then, like, well, I don't want to file this. This is just a Bumble hookup, like you said.
Yeah,
Why do we need to file?
Live Well Stream
Bumble?
or something
I
like
think
that.
you guys mean Tinder.
Hmm?
I don't know.
Bumble, Tinder, they're all the same.
Bumble's another one, right? I don't actually know.
Yeah.
I'm
I
like
don't
Just repeating you.
Jeremy and I are kind of out of the dating loop, so we
She
don't
just
really
said she
Grindr.
met this
Colby,
guy
you need to use
online,
Grindr.
and then
Grindr,
he
yeah.
came over.
Did I tell you I had a Grindr profile? Like somebody messaged me and was like,
Okay.
"Dude, you have a Grindr profile," and I was like, "What's Grindr?" And they're like, "Okay, so I'm gonna assume this isn't you." So someone actually got my photo from
And put
like
one
just
up there.
online and used
Yeah.
my photo as their photo for their profile on Grindr, which I suppose I
pretty
should be
Flattered.
flattered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, Grindr was nice enough to take it down when I sent them a message saying it was me. Sarah, you're smiling. You're like, sure, it was someone else, Kolby.
No, I'm like, have you seen the show Uncoupled yet?
No, I have not.
And I'm
You
kind
should
of
watch that
wondering
one,
what
yes.
other pictures they had.
I
That
don't-
probably were not you, but like Grindr's a big part of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that show.
So,
So anyway,
yeah.
Anyways,
to answer
anyways-
your question,
Yes, let me, yeah.
no, I like the story. In some ways, it feels like this is a response to, how public health organizations handled the COVID pandemic. This is
Yeah.
a criticism of that, of the authoritarianism of the public health organizations.
Yeah. So one of the things that's really that makes this go from being like responsive to like really clever is this was written before COVID, I think, because we published it in December of 2020. So I don't know that for sure, but my guess would be
it may have already been written.
Yeah, which also goes to the universality of the question, right? If you look at the discussion questions, one of the discussion questions is like, the government is literally in the limiting your rights business. Like, that's what they do. They tell you how fast you can drive a car. They tell you have to wear a seatbelt. They tell you, whether or not if you can, I don't know, start a steel smelting factory in your backyard. Like that, like they limit rights so that there is a greater public good. Like that's their job, right? And so I find it really interesting to try and figure out what, and I don't know, outside of tradition, I don't know why this wouldn't be okay. Like, I don't know why this is a line too far, but other things aren't. Like, if you're telling me I have to get my kids vaccinated to get them into school, I don't know why you wouldn't tell me like, yo, you have to like run this background check on people to make sure that they're not going to give you an STD that kills you. That goes back
to the title of the story, like for your health.
Yeah.
Right.
But I feel like it's also just this ongoing discussion between public health, public safety, and personal freedoms.
Right, which you could argue is the same thing with marijuana.
With everything.
With everything. With all of the things that hurt you, or like why, like I've always wondered, like why marijuana and not soft drinks? Like neither are good for you, but neither are really bad for anyone else. Like there's not like secondary,
I mean, well, let's talk about there's a line between like COVID. COVID is an airborne respiratory virus.
That one actually makes more sense to me.
You can walk into a room and catch it merely by being in the room with somebody.
Right.
But this is asking about STIs, which are like a really personal decision that you're choosing to make. So if I walk into a room and somebody has COVID, I'm not making a choice to enter into a relationship with that person.
So maybe that's the difference.
Whereas, like going into a bedroom and sleeping with somebody, I'm making a choice to do that and take on that risk.
So it's the opting into the risk, maybe, is the difference,
right?
As opposed to the unknown.
Like I'm standing in line with somebody at the bank.
So it is a little bit like the difference between smoking and secondhand smoke. Like I'm choosing to smoke, but I'm not choosing to walk into a room where other people are smoking.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
Exactly.
All right. Would you guys support this app, by the way? I'm just curious.
I don't know. I
think it would depend on what the STIs are. If they, the correlation to the corollary of HIV, which is not curable but treatable at this point.
Yeah.
So it isn't
manageable.
It is not the public health risk that it was in the 80s.
Yeah.
So I think you would have a really hard time convincing people that protecting them from STIs with this level of invasion of privacy is worth it.
Yeah. I'm curious, what does the I stand for? I've always heard STDs.
It's the same. Infection, disease.
Oh, infection. Okay.
So I guess STD,
sense.
technically.
Okay, no, STI works too. I just hadn't heard that before. Yeah. The point you're going to, and this is one that I've thought about as a history teacher, is I always end up teaching about some point about World War I, and at some point you have to teach about how there were laws about where it was against the law to do anything that harmed the war effort. And speaking out about like, hey, maybe we shouldn't be in this war was considered a jailable offense because you were speaking out against the war effort. And it's like, well, wait a minute. And so I'll always have a student that asks, like, wait a minute. Like we studied the First Amendment 4 months ago. How is it's against the law to say, I don't want to go to war? And my answer is always like, well, we wouldn't do that today. First Amendment jurisprudence has evolved, but it's evolved during peacetime. I never know if it's evolved during wartime, right?
Right.
And I feel like it's
because they could bring back the draft,
right?
At any time,
right? And so if you bring back the draft, then speaking out against the draft might be something that aids and abets the enemy. In which case, you could go to jail for that. In which case, you're being jailed for exercising freedom of speech. And so that's one of the things that makes me struggle with this story is like, of course, when you read it the first time, like your gut reaction, at least mine was like, this is stupid. The government shouldn't get in the bedroom. But then I think of like, how bad is the disease? Like, how transmittable is it? How deadly is it? Sarah, you're looking like this might affect your opinion.
No, I'm listening to you. That's all.
Oh, okay. That's a bad idea.
And I'm wondering if like how deadly the disease really affects. Just keep talking, Kolby. I'm working on something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and so this is the thing I struggle with is I feel like one of the things that everyone talks in America, at least, I feel like there's this history of like, we have all of these values and morals. And then you're like, oh no, during the Civil War, there was no habeas corpus. They just jailed people for like months at a time until the war was over. And during World War I, you were put in jail for speaking out against the war. And so, and
in World War II, there were
the intern camps, right?
Right.
And, and we apologized for them, but we apologized after the war was over, right? Like first we're going to do it, then we'll apologize like after we've won and we can like retake the moral high ground. And so that's, you saw that a little bit with COVID where it was like, look, we're not telling you have to get a vaccination, but your work is. And if you want to go into a grocery store, we are. And if you, and so that's the thing.
If you want to be part of society,
right?
Here's the cost.
Right, unless you want to live in a log cabin in the woods,
yeah,
you've got to go get your COVID shot.
Okay, so people are inherently flawed, and you might know that you have some kind of STI. Get into a situation with somebody, not tell them about it.
Yeah.
But if you're on the other end of that, wouldn't you want to know? If you're the person that wants to know, wouldn't you stop and take a second to fill out the form real quick? Like, how bad do you want to know in the heat of the moment? Like, stop yourself. And so that's where, like, the punishments come in to play.
Sure.
If you get caught up in the heat of the moment, don't fill out the form, then you're forfeiting your right to know, and you're going to get punished because now you might be infected with something.
Mm-hmm.
And before you go on to have relations with somebody else, we need to make sure that you understand the consequences.
Hi, this is Kolby, and you are listening to After Dinner Conversation, short stories for long discussions. But you already knew that, didn't you? If you'd like to support what we do at After Dinner Conversation, head on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/After Dinner Conversation. That's right, for as little as $5 a month, you can support thoughtful conversations like the one you're listening to. And as an added incentive for being a Patreon supporter, you'll get early access to new short stories and ad-free podcasts, meaning you'll never have to listen to this blurb again. At higher levels of support, you'll be able to vote on which short stories become podcast discussions, and you'll even be able to submit questions for us to discuss during these podcasts. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being the kind of person that supports thoughtful discussion.
And before you go on to have relations with somebody else, we need to make sure that you understand the consequences.
Okay, so I understand all of that, but that doesn't answer the question on if it should be government mandated. I mean, I think it's I think we all agree that if we keep using whatever it is.
Well, it kind
Tinder
of
as an example. So let's say that Tinder gave you the ability to upload an STD test and it put like a little green check mark next to your profile. I think we all agree that, like, look, if it's an opt-in, like, yeah, that's cool. Like,
But Tinder's a for-profit corporation that's not going to double-check those tests.
No, it would totally just be like take a photo with your phone and,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
we decide that,
So the government's not a for-profit corporation. So with a corporation that's for-profit, they are going to want to encourage these engagements.
Right. Minimize anything that keeps them from making money.
Right.
Sure.
And if they check up on people's uploads, like if you're taking a drug test, you can always buy pee from somebody. You can buy a negative test from somebody and upload that.
Well, that's true. You could buy a negative STD test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but the government would be less likely to profit from false negatives.
Right. But they wouldn't let you upload a random test. You'd probably have to go to a government
You'd
facility.
have to prove it.
Right,
Yes,
an authorized test.
exactly.
Where it's automatic,
Authorized test.
where it's sent without you interfering in any way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting that in this story, the government has gotten so involved in people's sex lives. And I think it's interesting that the author used hepatitis C and HIV as
their examples.
As their examples, because those are really manageable diseases at this point.
That's actually my only criticism with the whole story. Is I wish that the author had made up a fake disease that we didn't know the details of.
Right,
Because
something much deadlier or scarier.
Not even, but nothing. Like we just didn't know. They were like, "Hey, you have HR 792." Like we don't know, and so that leaves it open for discussion of like, is it deadly? Is it transmittable? Is it manageable? And so when you read the story, that would then automatically make you wonder. Like it would change. Like it would automatically make you put that disease on like all these different scales as you're deciding if this is silly or not. But like since we know about HIV and we know about hepatitis C, we can sort of slot in our own understanding of it. That's my only complaint with the whole story, actually.
Yeah.
Well, and the way things work right now, if I had HIV, it would be completely private between me and my doctor. Nobody has the right to know that.
Yeah.
So this is kind of an interesting take on like any potential sexual partner you have actually has the right to know whether or not you are positive for any of these sexual transmitted infections.
Yeah. I still haven't heard you say if you support this or not.
I'm actually not really sure.
That's good. That means he's written the right kind of story.
I'm just kind of like, I'm still kind of like
conversation.
rolling this around in my head.
It's weird though, because on the one hand, it's like, I think it's stupid I should have to fill it out, but I sure would appreciate it if somebody else filled it out.
Right?
Yeah.
Like before you hooked up with somebody, wouldn't you like to know?
Right.
And wouldn't it like make everybody's behavior a little bit, oof, that feels like kink shaming in a way. Like, yeah, this story it was a great short story.
Yeah.
Like it brought up a lot of questions in my head immediately.
Yeah. And HIV is another interesting comparison here, or an interesting one to bring up, because prior to HIV, in the U.S., the public health agencies, for any infectious disease, like they had the right to collect names of, do all the contact tracing. Any public disease came through.
I didn't know that.
Absolutely. That changed because of HIV and because of the stigma it was putting on the gay population.
Oh,
and so a lot of litigation went through that really reduced the amount of power that the public health agencies had about contact tracing.
Oh, I didn't know that. Huh. There was, we may have talked about this a million episodes ago. When I was teaching in Mozambique, in order to get into the school, it was like a community college, I guess, teacher training school. You had to take an HIV test because HIV rates along the border with South Africa were like 25-30% in the ages of 16 to 21. It was like a third of the people had HIV. And so you had to take an HIV test to get into the school. They let you in, but then on the first day of school, they posted all the names of the people that were positive on the doors of all the classrooms. And they were just like, yo, just so you know, these are all the people at the school who have HIV. And they still let him into school. Yeah. Everything was cool. It was just like, these are the people not to have sex with if you don't want to get HIV, or to like have safer sex with. Right. And I was really, I don't want to say if I was both offended and fascinated by it. It was like, you know, if there had been cell phone cameras, I definitely would have taken a picture at the time. To send home. But
did you know if there was a lot of public stigma over that as well?
I think very little. I think because it was so common, I think there wasn't a lot of public stigma. Like imagine if there's a disease like HPV, where it's like a third of the people have it between the ages of 16 and 25. It's like
I think HPV is way more common than that.
Okay, well. You know what I mean then, right? So, like, if somebody told you that HPV, you'd be like, yeah, don't we all?
Right.
So, I think this story treads a line between a right to privacy.
Yeah.
And
a right safety.
To know.
Yeah.
Like, who you're getting in bed with.
Yeah. And I think it also brings up the important question of whose responsibility is it to know who you're getting to bed with? Is it the government's responsibility, or is it your responsibility?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it's your responsibility.
Right.
You know, and I think we could then talk about public stigma and it is really hard to talk to people about, hey, I'd like you to get an STD test and show me your results before we have a relationship. This is not something we do. I feel like in polite society.
I think
the assumption is
I've only ever been in a relationship with, I think, one person. Like one time I've hooked up with someone where they were like, yo, I kind of have this weird rule. Like, we got to go do an AIDS test before we have sex. And, me as a guy, I was like, I'll be back in 10 minutes. Like, let me just go to this. Like, you put on a movie. I'm going to go to the CVS.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. And not a problem. Like, this is a very reasonable request. And so I did. I don't know if I did it that day, but I certainly did it. Like, it was a priority. But it's only ever happened one time in my whole life. And I
think that might be the other discussion.
I bet it's never happened for either of you. Like, it seems like
me.
You've had someone say, I want an HIV test before? Okay.
Or a general STD screen.
Right, exactly. Or general STD screen, sure.
But I mean, it's something, and maybe that's what...
I feel like as a woman, I get general STD screens all the time.
Well, you have to go you have to go in every 6 months or a year, don't you, anyway?
No, actually, it's 5 years. If you don't have a history of cancer.
But I thought even if you're on birth control, I assumed that they did a complete STD test stuff when you went to go get your checkups for birth control pills.
These are cancer screenings, though.
Oh, okay.
So, no. If you're on birth control, you go once a year.
Because they won't give you more than a year's prescription, I thought.
Because they're cancer screenings.
Oh, okay.
And that's a risk factor.
Yeah.
So...
but yeah, not for guys.
But this goes on to the abortion debate that we're having right now. Like, whose business is it who I'm sleeping with and if I get pregnant?
Yeah.
And if I decide to abort the fetus that results from, whose business is that? So that resonated with me like, oh, this is literally nobody's business. So Zoe's character really got to me because she's trying to maintain this very stoic, emotionless face in front of these officials. And
then she loses it at the end and is shitty with them.
Yeah. But she has a right to be with them because they're asking her really personal questions that are really none of her damn business.
Right.
But I'm like, it's for your safety. We're trying to protect you. But STIs are one thing, pregnancy is something completely different. where's the slippery slope in this? Like, if this results in a pregnancy, we're going to know that you did this.
Right.
And so it kind of rings a little bit with the debate that we're having in the United States right now. Like, whose business is it?
And I think this is going to be an ongoing debate. Like, I think if somebody had read this same story in 50 years, like where we were on the spectrum may have moved significantly.
Yeah.
But the question wouldn't have changed. And that is, you know, at what point is it only your responsibility for your actions? And at what point is the government have a at what point is the government should be involved in the collective good? Right?
Right. And I think that's the question. You know, people need to be protected from their own foolishness.
There you
Right.
go. There's the helmet laws
that's
for
the
you.
role of the government. You know,
Right.
seatbelt laws,
Helmet laws,
motorcycle
red light
helmet
running.
laws. Right. All of
Yeah.
that. You know, and there's a lot of argument, particularly about motorcycle helmets. This only affects me.
Right. So why
You
do
know.
I care? Like, literally,
Right.
I'm the one who's going to die in this car crash.
Right. And
So it's really genius that this author picked STIs
Yeah.
because it doesn't just affect you. It affects
right.
any other partner you have in the
Right.
future.
Yeah.
Well, even motorcycle. I mean, up until the 90s, the courts really backed motorcycle helmet laws, saying that, you know, if you get injured, there's a huge cost to society.
Right. Because you might be in a coma forever or whatever.
Right.
else,
Disability, long-term disability,
Yeah.
you know, the ambulance rides, hospital costs, you know, all of that's borne
So-
by society.
So, Jeremy, do you see any difference between like cigarette / helmet / seatbelt / marijuana laws and the law in this story? Because those are all laws to protect you from yourself.
No, they're not.
Okay.
Cigarette laws, take that one out because those, like, not smoking inside of other places protects other people from you.
Yeah. Secondhand smoke is...
Oh, sure. No, I'm not saying
Yeah,
that
yeah.
there's not, but the fact you have to be 18 years old to buy cigarettes and like you can't go there are rules just about going and smoking cigarettes in your car, right? Like by yourself. But I understand your point.
But helmet laws are interesting. So what I was thinking of was the exact distinction. Laws that protect you from yourself
Mm-hmm.
versus laws that protect you from other people. So, like, driving drunk definitely
obviously helping
against
protect
the
you from
law.
other people.
protects you from red light laws.
Yeah.
Helmet laws are interesting.
It sounds like you're talking yourself into agreeing with this law.
I'm trying really hard not to. So as much as I would love to have access to this app so that if I could hook up with somebody, I could already know if they had a disease,
Yeah.
I'm not sure I want anybody having access to my health history.
Because it might hinder your ability to hook up with someone.
No, just...
Social
and again, I think it
stigma?
goes back to
Oh.
the stigma. You know, if there's stigma against these things, public stigma, it can be used against you.
Well, exactly the reason that this person ostensibly committed suicide at the end.
Sure, but I assume that you don't just that someone doesn't like it's not like open Bluetooth. It's not like you walk by and you know people's STD status. I assume that you have to like hit the approve to share button.
Right.
Well,
or
and that's
something.
where the main character runs into this. She's trying to get around it to have a private life.
No, I mean with the other person though. Like I assume that if you're going to hook up with somebody, like they don't just get to know your STD status by standing next to you. I assume that they're like, I would like to hook up with you, and you're like approve to share, and then it like submits the form and,
And
you're
then,
all clear.
right, see the information, right.
Right. So it's not like it's just float. The only person who would know the information would be you, the doctor, and the government. The general public wouldn't know unless you were like in a situation where you needed to share it.
Well, apparently, unless you're a repeat offender. And then
Yeah.
everybody knows.
And then your social trust
Oh, that's
system
true.
value rating.
That's true.
Like
That's a good
you're
I
point.
mean,
not
that's what I'm
socially
saying. Like,
trustworthy.
why this guy committed suicide at the end.
Because his life is ruined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he
Could be.
made that choice also. I'm buying into the world of the story here. He made that choice.
Yeah.
But
All right, so I'm gonna make this an
Okay.
easier question since we're running out of time. Here.
Well, I want to give one comment
Yeah,
before we
okay.
do that. So
Are we already
talking
running out
about
of time?
talking about the cigarette helmet laws,
Yeah.
all of those are enacted because there was a significant cost to society for those incidents around that. So
You could make the same argument for STDs, that there's this
right,
significant
and so
cost to
I
society.
think that's where this is going. That at some point, and there, that this did become a significant cost to society for this to be enabled.
Hmm.
And
Right,
there
so-
had to be a
yeah.
marketing scheme around that. Public information, why this is important, and we're enacting these laws because. It's
And
a
not
huge
really
public
private.
health.
It's still, like, in the story, it's not between you and your doctor. These public health officials know.
But they work for the government. I mean, it's not like everyone knows. It's like the people who need to know to make sure that you're complying with the law know. That's like saying my driver's license is should be a secret. It's like, no, the police officer needs to know if you actually have one.
Yeah, this is a great story. I just really liked it.
All right, so let me give you guys, since
Okay.
you're both on the fence, I'm gonna try and get you.
We will remain solidly on the fence, Kolby.
Yeah, but I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna try and figure out where your fence is, though.
Sure.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, let's say a 1 is like I would go and protest this on protest day in front of the Capitol, and number 10 being like I really think this is a good law. If this law was real, I would be in support of it. Where are you on the 1 to 10 scale?
5.
Son of a bitch.
No, I can't. Go ahead.
I feel like privacy is a huge thing.
It is.
And especially where we stand with the abortion debate right now, I feel
Uh-huh.
like my right to privacy is more important.
Okay. And
So that's just, but that's like outside influences. In the world of the story, I'm not quite sure I agree with the Zoe character. I feel like she should have filed her form.
Okay, so you're like a 3 in the
Yeah.
story, or you're a 3 in real life, but like a 6 or a 7 in the story's world.
Sure, yeah.
All right, Jeremy, you got some solid hair going on, by the way, today.
Yeah, thank you. No, because I was doing some research on this before we got
Were
together.
you?
So, yeah.
I like that.
So no, it's always, because this is always an interesting conversation. I feel like we've had this more than once about
Oh yeah,
the right to privacy versus public
Sure.
safety or whatever.
Sure.
The government protecting us from ourselves and protecting society from the cost of individual foolishness.
yeah.
But I feel like they should stay out of the bedroom too.
All right,
This is why the story was so great. It's such an interesting question and a good way to pose it.
it is.
It's a really good way to pose it because, like, I feel like I knew where I would fall on this, but I'm not so sure.
Oh, that's cool.
and-
It's a good story.
And
Yeah.
maybe with more information about, what other STIs are,
I think that's the thing, right?
The-
The missing
yeah.
information about like what's the situation
what caused
in
this.
in this
Yeah.
right in this world in this moment.
No, I think that we just need to take it as the author, like,
Which is
said
fine.
it.
But so in general, I do think public health officials should have more authority.
All right. We say this is 3 people who all got COVID
I know.
shots.
And wore masks
Yeah.
and did all
Yeah.
the things.
All
yeah.
the things, did the things.
We
Yeah,
were the
well-
responsible. We were the people who would fill out the form, basically.
Yeah.
But we're not quite sure if you should be required to fill out the form.
Right. We would choose to fill out the form. We just don't want to be required to fill out the form.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way to phrase it. Yeah. I'm just saying that cat behind you doesn't require a form. She just prowls the street and does what needs
Sweet.
doing. All right.
No, she just sits there all day.
Yeah, she doesn't see anyone. There's no form needed.
Good story, Kolby. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, thank you for joining us. Our story next week is something about dandelions. What is it? The Growing and Weeding of Dandelions by Tim Sharp.
Yeah.
I'll probably space these out. It'll probably be 2 weeks from now. We'll release the next one. Also, the next one's a really good story too. So it's also from our December 2020 magazine. Please like and subscribe. And that's it. We'll see you next in a couple weeks. Bye, guys.
Indeed.
All right.
Bye.
If you've enjoyed listening to this, please like and subscribe. It helps us out a ton. You know, the vast majority of people listen haven't liked and subscribed, which means maybe it shows up in your algorithm, maybe it doesn't. So don't leave that to chance. Just go ahead and hit that button, and we'd sure appreciate that. And that way we can keep doing what we're doing, and you're not left to the whims of some algorithm. Thanks.